Gail Rubin is a long-term friend of mine, as long as I've been here in Albuquerque, and she's a person I am truly honored to know. She not only talks about getting prepared for death, she's experienced it way too much in the past couple of years, and she's gained wisdom from her experience. And this, incidentally, is not the kind of experience that most speakers aim for. So let's welcome today's speaker, Gail Rubin. She has a title you've likely not heard. She is a certified Thanatologist and the Doyenne of Death. Ultimately, this means she's a pioneer in the field of death education. Sounds serious, doesn't it? But she's different. She uses humor, film clips, and outside-the-box activities to prod reluctant adults to plan for end-of-life issues. Yeah, we continue to live and still have to do some planning. But wait, there's more. She hosts the Doyenne of Death podcast, as well as the Mortality Movies TV series. She was one of the first people to hold a death cafe. I'm not going to ask what they ate, but they held the Death Cafe in the United States and is the coordinator of the 7th annual Before I Die New Mexico Festival. It starts here in New Mexico, November 1st through the 4th. This work is so special that the Association for Death Education and Counseling recognized Gail's worth with their 2024 Community Educator of the Year award. She puts fun and seriousness into funeral planning. You can see it in her book titles, A Good Goodbye, Funeral Planning for Those Who Don't Plan to Die. It's amazing how many of them there are like that. Kicking the Bucket List, 100 Downsizing and Organizing Things to Do Before You Die, and Hail and Farewell, Cremation Ceremonies, Templates, and Tips. In case you don't know, a doyenne is a woman who is a senior in a group who knows a lot about a particular subject. For those dying to avoid her topic, we can all benefit from her talk today. Let's welcome Gail Rubin. Yay.
Do you guys ever think about dying?
Please say hello to Death himself, the Grim Reaper!
My name's Will, and I'm dead. I know it's sad, but hey, a lot of awesome people are dead. It happens.
Who knows? After long work and dedication in the long run.
What long run? In the long run, we're all dead. I'm not gonna die. You see, I'm into this thing where if I get sick, real sick, where I'm about to go, they just take me away and freeze me.
Although he is certain to die, perhaps from a household accident, which account for 65% of all unnatural deaths.
All right, we did not die today. I call that an unqualified success.
You're all gonna die. What's wrong with it?
I'm dying too.
You're going to die.
Prepare to die.
Death is full of surprises, huh?
You have no idea.
My motto is, talking about sex won't make you pregnant. Talking about funerals won't make you dead. I've been doing this for 15 years, and so far, so good. Yet, despite great advances in medical care, humans do still have a 100% mortality rate. And yet, studies show that less than 30% of adults do any end-of-life planning, wills or trusts, advanced medical directives, pre-need funeral planning, downsizing. And that's going to leave 70% or more of our loved ones in a pretty tough spot, not if, but when there's a death in the family. So you heard Janelle tell you that a doyenne is a woman who's considered senior in a group who knows a lot about a particular subject. I was not always the doyenne of death. And I will tell you how I got into this field. I got married. But let me also describe what a thanatologist is. Where does that term come from? In Greek mythology, there is a demigod called Thanatos, who is the personification of a good death. Not to be confused with Thanos from the Marvel movies, but I think that's why they kind of named him that, to be a death bringer. Well, Thanatos' twin brother is Hypnos, which is sleep. So sleep and a good death are very closely related. So thanatology, the study of death, dying, and bereavement. I am an unusual thanatologist in my use of humor in film clips, and have been at this for a while. So yeah, before I became a death educator, death, not deaf. When I'm on an airplane and I say that I'm a death educator, people inevitably talk about sign language. And I was like, no, you did not hear me correctly. So my husband, David Bleicher, and we got married in 2000 and had a very creative Jewish Western wedding. We asked our guests to dress in Western wear. We had the reception at a converted horse barn with sawdust on the floor and a Western swing band, and everybody just had a really great time. I wanted to write a book about creative life cycle events and call it Matchings, Hatchings, and Dispatchings, about weddings and births and deaths. And I had the opportunity to write a monthly feature in the Albuquerque Tribune, which is now defunct, but it was the columns on death and funerals that got the most reader response. And I thought about it and it was like, there's already plenty of books about creative wedding planning. We don't need more on that topic. But at the time, there was not much at all about creative funeral planning. So I focused on funerals, and a good goodbye funeral planning for those who don't plan to die was the result, and that changed the course of my career. I became certified in thanatology. I became a certified funeral celebrant. I became an insurance agent, but I don't push that very much. And in order to write this book, I had to pre-plan a funeral for someone. I had never pre-planned a funeral before. So I picked on my father-in-law, Norman Bleicher. Norm was getting up there in years. He had had 3 open heart surgeries in his lifetime, and he had not pre-planned his arrangements. In fact, Dave and I went to buy funeral plots for ourselves, and we invited my in-laws, Norm and Myra, to come along, see if they'd like to buy a plot too, leading by example. And in fact, they came, they saw, and we bought 4 burial plots together. And at this point, 3 of them are filled. But that's another story for later. When I went to pre-plan for Norm, Dave and I went to the funeral home and we're talking about what we needed to provide information-wise. And there was a lot of information we did not have with us that I'm really glad Norm was still alive to give us that information. And over dinner one night, Norm's like, oh, sure, I'll get you the family history and my social security number, and I'm going to write my own obituary. And I'm thinking, this is great. He's into this. And then I look over at Myra, my mother-in-law, and she's looking down at the roast beef and the mashed potatoes. She doesn't want to think about this. She doesn't want to talk about it. No, Norm will live forever. Well, here are the 5 things you must know now about anybody you're going to plan a funeral for, because 4 of them go on the death certificate. Social security number. Think about it. You know your own social security number. Do you know your spouse's or where to find it? Of course, probably on your tax return. But if you're called to plan for a sibling or your parents or, God forbid, a child, you need to have the Social Security number to go on the death certificate. Mother's maiden name. Another, maybe you know it, maybe you don't. And also place of birth for the deceased. And in some states, also for the parents of the deceased. Gets a little squirrelier if you don't know that kind of information. And veterans information. If the deceased was a veteran, you need that DD 214 form that is proof of service. And you can get burial plots, not only for the deceased, but their spouse in a national cemetery or a state cemetery. And that's, thousands, or in a niche, of course, with the rise in cremation. Niches are becoming much more popular in national cemeteries. The fifth item I would like to mention is online passwords. In our online lives, how many passwords do we have? And how will our loved ones be able to shut down accounts if we don't have those passwords? It's a big deal. And I don't recommend any particular password manager. In fact, I don't use an online password manager. I have a spreadsheet that I have to update on a regular basis as we have to change our passwords. So back to dinner with Norm and Myra. We got past that. We got Norm's information on file. He was in his late 70s at that point. And then several years later, going into a house, he fell and fractured his hip. And with an 82-year-old man, as often happens, that was the beginning of a 7-week downhill health slide. 3 ER admissions. And on the 3rd ER admission, with trouble breathing, they said, this is not something we can fix, because he was basically inhaling anything he ate or drank. So they admitted him on palliative care, and the family gathered. He was in the hospital for a week. We were all there when he died. It was a beautiful, peaceful, pain-free passing. And right after he expired, a nurse came up to Myra and said, "Would you like to donate the organs?" She said, he was 82 years old. Who would want them? That was a no. So, that's another thing to think about in your end of life plans. Do you want to donate your organs? Besides, do you want to be buried, cremated, and some of the other newer options we will talk about in a few moments. So it had been 7 weeks back and forth between the rehab, the hospital, and we went to the funeral home the next day. We were exhausted, but because of the pre-planning, it was easy, it was quick. We were done in an hour. And you know what took the most time? Writing the obituary. Norm did not get around to writing his own obituary, but Myra put it all on her credit card. Think of the points, the miles. And when we walked out of there, she said, I really didn't like it when you were pre-planning, but now when we needed it, I'm really glad it was done. So that gave me my mission to help get people to talk about this topic and to do something about it, because it will happen to all of us. And in fact, as Janelle mentioned, over the past 3 years, I have had 5 loved ones die, and actually all on hospice. And because they were in my circle of influence, they had all pre-planned with my help, which made it incredibly helpful, especially in my own personal life with my husband, Dave. He died a year and a half ago, April 28th. And it was not expected. He was 72 years old. He went for prostate surgery. Gentlemen, please pay attention. Now, Dave had cardiac history like his dad. but the cardiologist had cleared him for the surgery. Yet 2 days after the surgery, because you have to go off blood thinners for surgery, he had a heart attack. He developed sepsis, kidney failure. He was rehospitalized. He coded in the hospital, was revived and coded again, revived again. 3 broken ribs in the ICU for a week. There was one day when we thought maybe he'd get well enough to be discharged to a rehab facility. But that one day was followed by a crash where he was incoherent, his blood pressure was dropping, and that's when they told me it's time for comfort care and hospice. The Friday morning that the woman came to enroll him in the hospice program, she was like, "You're Gail Rubin, the Doyenne of Death? I'm such a fangirl." So that little bright spot in what was a troubling time was so great to hear. And I was with Dave at an inpatient hospice facility around the clock for a week. And I went out of the room to make a phone call, and within 15 minutes, he died. He did not want me to see him die. So then it was time to go plan the funeral, which we had already put our plans on file and prepaid for them. And by the way, in California, as well as in New Mexico, I believe when you prepay for a funeral, you're actually buying an insurance policy that pays the funeral home. So you still own your money. Should you decide to move and want to use a different funeral home, you take that policy and another funeral home will honor that policy. And I was going into the funeral home. I've gone into many, many funeral homes over the course of my career, but this day it felt different. I was walking with my brother-in-law and I said, I don't know how people who have not planned ahead can deal with this. It was so much easier to be doing this because we already knew we're going to have a funeral. He's got a wicker basket casket because Dave did the laundry in our family. And I had readings from The Lord of the Rings. You want a physicist to speak at your funeral. And so we worked with the funeral home, the rabbi at the synagogue, the cemetery people. It's, especially when burial is involved, you're dealing with several different companies. So that's something to know before you go into that as well. And we had a pretty memorable funeral for Dave. And I was so impressed with the number of people who came out. Probably as many as came to our wedding, in the range of 120 people. And it was so heartening to me to have all of that support from so many different areas of my life. So that's why you want to have a funeral. But of course, there are people who are like, don't have a funeral for me when I'm gone. It's like, it's not their choice. It's for the living that you have a funeral, to come together and to remember a person with love. If you get the Washington Post, there is a very interesting story today about another viral obituary about a man who was in Texas when he died. And, well, he had lived in Texas all his life, but there was a line there about, he's now God's problem. And I was like, I want to read that obituary for sure. One of the other elements that we're going to talk about a bit this morning are new trends in death care. Certainly, medical aid in dying is an option in California as well as in New Mexico. 11 jurisdictions in the United States provide for that. In New Mexico, and I think the ground rules for accessing medical aid in dying are pretty similar. You need to have a terminal diagnosis of about 6 months to live. So that would qualify you for hospice care. In New Mexico, you need the ruling of 2 doctors. And if you go on hospice, it's like your primary care physician and the hospice doctor. Those are give you the clearance for that. You have to be mentally competent. Just because somebody's got dementia, you can't make them die with medical aid in dying. Because that person needs to sign paperwork saying, yes, I know drinking this medication is going to kill me, and I want to go now. So, in fact, Myra accessed medical aid in dying back in July of this year. She was 95 years old. And we can get into that story during the Q&A if you want. But so I was actually able to see medical aid in dying in actual practice. And it was a very peaceful passing, very much desired by her, and very much supported by our family in a loving gathering with her in her living room. Another element of new trends are death doulas. These are generally women, although there are men who are death doulas. In past history, doulas were women who helped women give birth. And a death doula is someone who helps someone who recognizes that they will be dying at some point, to make arrangements to be there if hospice is involved, and to generally provide guidance in this area that so many people avoid learning about before it's too late. Now, I do not consider myself a death doula. I consider myself a death educator because I want to get to people well before they are at death's door. Another new trend you may not know about is alkaline hydrolysis, water cremation. So fire-based cremation uses a lot of energy, generates 532 pounds of CO2 with an average-sized person being cremated with natural gas. I've got solar panels on my house here in sunny New Mexico, and I get a readout of how much CO2 I'm offsetting by generating electricity from the sun. So I would have to run my solar panels for 14 sunny New Mexico days to offset 1 cremation. So the idea behind water cremation is the body is put into a tank with water and potassium, an alkaline chemical, and the water is brought up to temperature. And this speeds up the process of decomposition down to the bones to a couple of hours. It uses 1/10 of the energy that flame-based cremation uses. So I believe California is one of the states that has water-based cremation. And you can also get natural organic reduction, also known as body composting. Already 11 states have legalized this approach. It's not cheap, it's not quick, but they take the body and put it in a tank with biodegradable materials, wood chips and grass and hay and flowers. And over the course of 6 to 8 weeks, the body will decompose. The bones are taken out and ground up as cremation does. They use a cremulator. It's basically a bone blender where the bones are put in and brought down to crumbly bits that you've probably seen if you've seen cremated remains, and then put back in with the mulch. The resulting mulch compost will fill the bed of a regular sized pickup truck. So you get a lot of mulch as a result, and it can be put in your garden. It's sterile. It's a a wonderful way to honor somebody who is very much an eco-friendly kind of person. And we'll be talking about a lot of these developments at the Before I Die New Mexico Festival. I would love to have you guys participate. Our sessions on Zoom will be on Zoom during the day, November 1st through the 4th. We'll be having mortality movies each night related to the theme of each day. The first day is eco-friendly funerals. Second day is about hospice and medical aid in dying. Third day is about preparing for the inevitable. And the last day is unexpected deaths. We've got some great speakers. In fact, some members of the National Speakers Association are going to be coming here to wow us with a bunch of really good presentations. So I will upload the schedule of events if you'd like to see, and would love to have you join us online, or even, hey, come to New Mexico. It's a good excuse. And I'm welcoming your questions, and let's have a little conversation.
Well, that was absolutely fabulous. Unbelievable. I'm not quite sure I want to be a biodegradable frick. But the first question is from Alan Garber. And I would like everybody to know Gail must leave at 8:50 our time. So please, short, specific questions so we can have as many as possible. Over to you, Alan.
Thank you, Gail. Unfortunately, this is a very timely topic for me. My wife has a terminal illness, and we don't know how long she'll be. It could be 6 months, it could be 6 years. We don't know. But my question is basically, how do I get a hold of your book? Is it on Amazon or what? And does the book cover basically everything that you just spoke about? And
yes,
and that
it's on Amazon. You can get it directly from my website, agoodgoodbye.com.
What's the website?
agoodgoodbye.com.
Okay.
Where you can also get my t-shirts, which have snappy sayings like, "The one who dies with the most toys still dies."
I saw the one that says it's better to live rich than to die rich.
There you go. Yeah. But yes, a good goodbye. And then if you wanted ideas for a moving ceremony, Hail and Farewell has got readings and ideas for structuring ceremonies.
My other question is, I'm also Jewish, and as you know, we bury our dead very quickly after death, and not always a lot of time for people to get to it, especially if they're out of town. What do you think of the idea of having like small graveside funeral and then say a celebration of life a few weeks later?
I think that's a great idea. Yeah. Now, depending on, how Orthodox or Reform you are, right, you could wait a few days with refrigeration of the body.
Yes, I know. We did that with my mother. Yes.
Yeah. But I do like that idea. I think that's a great way. And, in the depths of the pandemic, people would actually have Zoom graveside funerals. I actually had a cousin's husband die during the pandemic and was able to be graveside with them through the wonders of Zoom.
Thank you.
Good. Tom Jacobs next, then Dan Wetmore, then Bert Hill, then Janelle Barlow. Remember, short, specific questions.
With regard to death with dignity, the dementia community is sort of caught in a catch-22, because if you're within 6 months of death, you're probably no longer competent. If you're competent, you're probably not yet within 6 months of death. So is any progress being made to address this this exclusion of a huge population of the people who could benefit from this policy?
I know that the national organization Compassion and Choices does have some information about how you can plan ahead for dementia and impacting the desire to have aid in dying. One of the other totally free options that's available in any state is voluntarily stopping eating and drinking. And death doulas can be helpful in that. When you stop eating and drinking, probably within 2 weeks, one would be able to achieve a peaceful death. But you need assistance from others to make sure you're not eating or just a little sip of water. That is currently and will always be an option for people.
Thank you. I had a medical procedure and didn't eat for 18 hours, didn't drink for about 10 hours, but I can't imagine for 2 weeks. All right, Bert Hill and then Janelle Barlow.
Yeah. Well, we belong to Better Place Forest. It's a San Francisco-based company. You're familiar with
Yes, in fact, they are one of the sponsors of our festival.
Oh,
Yay.
okay. Well, that's good. And the way that it works is they have 2 or 3, maybe 3 now own forests.
Actually,
Redwood
they have
forests.
like at least 6.
Okay. They're growing faster than I thought.
They've got them on the East Coast, the West Coast,
Yeah.
North, and one in near Flagstaff, which is like 4 hours from Albuquerque.
Ours is up on the North Coast, North Coast redwoods. And when members of my family pass away, we go through the process of composting ourselves, like you described. And then the ashes will be around the redwood tree to fulfill it. And I'm hoping it works out with the kids and everybody else, where it's a generational tree. And it's guaranteed. It's all careful and that sort of thing. But just look up Better Place Forest. It's designed to have almost no carbon effect. And
so are you going to do natural organic reduction, or are you going to be cremated?
Oh, not cremated. No. I'm on zero. I'm on zero carbon.
Okay. Because what Better Place Forest does is you basically buy a tree in a conservation forest, and more often people would have cremated remains buried under the tree.
Yeah.
And good on you for doing the composting. Yay.
Well, everybody here knows I'm an anti-carbon guy. So
So Bert is dying the way he's living. So that's for him, it's an absolute perfect choice. Janelle Barlow, then Tracy Hooper. We had a lot of our members came in late who did not want to miss your speech. So Janelle, then Tracy.
Oh, thank you, Rep. And thank you, Gail. I've known you for a while, never heard the full presentation, and I've been so resolved to do everything that I've heard you recommend. And this time I'm going to get ready. I'm going to do it. But I wanted to make a quick comment about death with dignity. My first, by dignity or whatever it's called, my first husband who lived in Oregon chose that method. He had colon cancer that went away, went away. He lived for quite a while. And then he decided it wasn't working. So he decided to do this. And the thing that I want to say that really amazed me was that the people who were there, who were in charge of bringing the drugs and so on, they said that they were so impressed with him because they came in with the drugs, he took them, he had a popsicle as his last meal, and then he just went to sleep. And they said this, and I had no idea. They said almost no one who chooses this route does it the first time out. They have to come back because the fear, apparently, I think it's fear, they say, no, I don't want to go yet. And so then they have to come back. And sometimes they have to come back 2 or 3 times. So they were very impressed with his bravery. And that's something to anticipate if you know anybody who's going to do this, that they may not want to do it the first time out. So just apparently that's what happened.
How long ago was that?
This, let's see, we were still living in California, in Las Vegas, so that would have been more than 7 years ago.
Okay.
You seem to have a comment there.
Well, because the combination of drugs that they use for this has evolved over the course of time. And, but it's 2 ounces of 5 different medications in a liquid, which can be very burning and bitter, which is why the popsicle or sorbet. And in fact, okay, I'll tell you what happened with Myra. She drank the first ounce and she had a very bad reaction to the burning and the bitterness. And my brother-in-law, Stephen, during this whole week, she was like, I just want to go be with Al, her second husband, who had died the week before on hospice. And he starts saying, drink it if you want to see Al. Drink it if you want to see Al. Third time, drink it if you want to see Al. She said, stop saying that. And that was her last words. She drank the rest of it. And within 2 minutes, she fell asleep. And in less than an hour, she had peacefully passed away. But that was kind of a funny exit.
Yes. But apparently a lot of people will just simply not even take that first drink because they realize it's going to happen and fast.
Yeah.
And it's too much for human desire to live to deal with that.
All right, great. Thank you. This is wonderful. And Tracy Hooper.
Gail, thank you very much. My husband Henry and I have 3 daughters, and everything we do now really focuses on how can we make this easy for our children. Every closet we clean out, we've just updated our will and our trust with our attorney. It's all about how can we make this simple for our girls. And I'm wondering if you've heard about a knock box, a next of kin box, and what you think of that.
Yes, I think that's a fabulous idea. To pull together all of that information so that your next of kin and would be able to access what they need to know, your will, your advanced medical directives, the trust, and how things would be implemented. And some people say, oh, I don't need a trust. I don't have that much stuff, but you actually might need that. And of course, probate is different from state to state, and a trust helps you avoid going to probate court once somebody dies. But yeah, a knockbox is an excellent thing to have and put together and keep updated. That's an important part of it because, people die, people get divorced. Do you really want your ex-husband to be on your advanced medical directives as your spokesperson? No. Yeah. So
yes. Well, when we created our will several years ago and our trust, we made 2 of our Henry's brother and a friend the advanced directive experts or speaking for us. But now our girls are adults, 32, 34, 36. So we've now made them. So that was an update that we met. And also, I live in Portland, Oregon. Many of you all are in California. The knockbox, I guess you can just grab and run out the door if there's an earthquake or if there's a fire. Is that the way it works?
Yeah, it's portable.
Yeah. Okay, I haven't gotten it, but that's on my to-do list this week.
Good for
you. All right,
you.
thank you. Next question is past President Kathy Somerville. Unmute, Kathy. Yes, your question, please.
Yeah, I wasn't here for the introduction, and I'm just so grateful I came in when I did. And I just want to thank you for having the courage to continue having this conversation. When my mother passed, I had a binder, and in it was everything that was needed. And through the grief and my sisters coming together and my father to having that directive set. But above and beyond that, hearing the conversation this morning, having the courage to have this conversation and what it brings out in human nature is so compassionate. There's so much compassion in having this conversation that is, being Catholic, it was a taboo thing that somebody else took care of. Don't talk about it because of the suspicious. So, my question is, how has your welcome been to so many different organizations that may have not wanted to have this conversation until now? Have you been breaking into new territory?
Well, with my TV show that I just started this year, Mortality Movies, I'm hoping that's going to open more doors. I have spoken to Jewish audiences. I've spoken to a few churches, but it would be great to be able to, yes, broaden the conversation. And I find that using film clips is a really great way to do that. And you can see mortality movies on YouTube. I have a YouTube channel at Gail Rubin. And I've also, because I created this series, and this is a great resource you may want to know about. I don't know if it's in San Francisco, but in Albuquerque, we have a community access studio that I go into, and that's where I recorded my series. And then it's out there on cable access in Albuquerque, and there's a clearinghouse called PEG Media for public, educational, and government media that will be circulating my series out to cable access channels around the country.
Thank you. Thank you for all of this.
I'm also updating and organizing because I don't have any children. And my bookkeeper is helping me. We find photos and plans. And so I have a file for the next owner of my house who might be interested in all the different paint jobs and the design of the garden, because I hope to die here, but the next person might be interested. All right. Gail has 7 or 8 more minutes with us. Are there any more questions? Oh, yes, Mike Milstein, and I did mute you, so please unmute you for the question.
Yes, Gail. I have a friend whose daughter invented something called the Death Deck. Are you familiar with that? Because it raises all the questions that you've just raised. And I think it'd be very valuable for you to be aware of this. It's called the Death Deck.
I have heard of it, yes. In fact, I think I have a set here.
And Linda is just holding it up.
So, there you go.
Yeah, Death Deck. Yes, thank you, Linda.
I also have a game called the Newly Dead game. It's like the newlywed game, but the questions are how well you know your partner's last wishes. And I also have an individuals edition that asks 4 questions about how well prepared you are. And if you answer, I don't care, I'll be dead, you get 0 points.
All right, Carl Walsh, then our guest, Linda, and we do thank all our guests. We have interesting speakers like Gail 3 times a month in Zoom. Carl, then Linda.
Yes, I was just wondering, Gail, I don't know if you read my post on LinkedIn, but to me, the tradition of Dia de los Muertos is fantastic. I mean, it helps the living deal with the concept of death. And as you have behind you there, it basically says they're not dead. They're just somewhere else. Do you know of any other cultural things that people can look at to help them deal with the passing of a loved one?
Well, yeah, watch the film Coco. That is a wonderful explanation of Day of the Dead traditions. And in fact, Jewish funeral traditions are quite good for psychological processing. The idea is you bury quickly, and then the community focuses their supportive attention on the family. The family, the idea of sitting Shiva, you stay in your house for a week after the funeral, and your community brings food and they keep you company. And the the idea of, oh my God, it's been 2 days, I have to go back to work. You don't have to worry about that. And I can tell you what I went through with Dave. I very much needed those 7 days of support. And so that's very helpful.
All right, Linda, you have the last question, and then I will ask Gail to give her concluding remarks. I told her they are not final remarks because she will live to deliver another presentation. Linda.
Thank you. I just wanted to follow up with 2 other resources in case you aren't familiar. One is called the Conversation Project, theconversationproject.org, and they have free materials in several different languages, how to begin conversations around all of this. So that's one group. And the other is I just finished reading a book which has fabulous photos in it as well. The Lonely Planet's Guide to Death, Grief, and Rebirth, How Global Grieving Customs Can Help Us Live and Die Well. And so customs from around the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And thank you, Gail, and everyone else's.
Thank you.
All right, Gail, your concluding remarks before you go off for your high-paid engagement.
So on the cover of A Good Goodbye, you see a cartoon. It's Pearls Before Swine. I love that cartoon. It has great insights for life and death and living. On my book cover, it says, Pig and Zebra are sitting on the beach having a conversation. Pig says, I have big plans for my life. And the zebra says, like what? Like never dying. I don't plan to die. Zebra says, we have no choice, Pig. We die whether we want to or not. They thinks about it for a panel. He says, that's going to affect my other plans. And on Sunday, there was, if you read this cartoon, there's a character called the Wise Ass on the Hill. And the Wise Ass on the Hill came down to deliver a message directly to Rat and Goat, who are sitting having a cup of tea together. And he says, there is no past. There is no present. There is no future, sorry. There is only the present moment. And we don't know how many of them we have left. So hug your loved ones and do everything in your power to celebrate the moment that you're in. And remember, talking about sex won't make you pregnant. Talking about funerals won't make you dead. So please continue this conversation with your loved ones. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Gail. Absolutely amazing.
Great to be with you.
Those of us who know you are wildly impressed always, and now we've introduced you, and this is obviously a very important conversation. So I know you have to go for your other engagement, but we are 10 minutes ahead of our normal closing time, so we will keep the meeting open for any more conversations that our members like to have on the subject. And we certainly thank you, Gail. We certainly appreciate all our guests and your contributions. Thank you, Dan. Obviously, your fans are very involved and have a lot to offer to the conversation. So with that, the door is open. If anyone else would like to make a comment, Tracy. Tracy Hooper has agreed to come back and speak for us again next year.